to live in a neighborhood with you, so let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor?
I actually live around the corner, and I was asked to come back to tell you about who I am a little bit. And some of you might have heard of me. I am many things to many people. This is me, and not coincidentally, Daniel the Tiger. When people ask me which of my characters I identify the most with, it is Daniel the Tiger. So I want to show you a little bit of the original Daniel the Tiger, if you remember him.
Fine, Daniel. I hope I'm not disturbing you.
I was just reading a book about tigers.
But you are a tiger.
I know. I read everything I can about tigers.
You want to know about your ancestors?
Yes. And you know something?
What?
I don't think I'm very much like other tigers.
You look like a tiger to me.
But I don't act like other tigers.
You mean you don't roar and growl and show your teeth and scare people? Is that what you mean?
That's some of it.
So?
So it makes me feel bad sometimes.
You feel bad because you don't scare people and you aren't mean to them?
But that's what tigers are supposed to do.
Well, maybe old, wild tigers do that because maybe that's who they are.
But what about me?
You're not an old wild tiger. You're a new tame tiger.
That's not in any of the books.
No. You're an advanced breed of tiger.
I am?
Sure. You've evolved from your ancestors into something finer than any tiger has ever been.
I have?
Sure.
So that's Daniel the Tiger, the character that I identify the most with. And I once said I must be an emotional archaeologist because I keep looking for the roots of things, particularly the roots of behavior and why I feel certain ways about certain things. Maybe I am an emotional archaeologist. I don't know. But one thing that I am, and I am many things to many people, is a pianist. I started out studying music at Rollins College. And it was there I had an epiphany. I was watching television when I was 23 years old. And I saw some people throwing pies at each other, and I thought, what a terrible medium. They're using it so badly. It could be so much better. You could do so much better with this. So I went into television because I hated it so. And I thought there's some way of using this fabulous instrument to nurture those who would watch and listen. So I moved to New York after graduating, and I started working at NBC, different television shows. And one of them was a Western show for children called Gabby Hayes. And I worked there for a couple of years. But I quit NBC because I felt its reliance on advertisements and merchandise undermined its ability to educate and enrich young audiences. And I moved back to Pittsburgh. And I started the Children's Corner together with Josie. And it was an hour of live television every day. And the budget was $125 per month. And we each got $75 as a salary, Josie and I. But I was always behind the camera doing Daniel the Tiger and many other characters. Never in front of it. But while I was doing this show, I also studied educational developmental psychology. And that's where I had a mentor called Dr. Margaret B. Farland. And my wife once said that she was the one that let me know it's okay to be sensitive. And she really helped me find the courage to be myself with children and the rest of the world. I also became, during this time, a Master of Divinity and was ordained as a Presbyterian priest, minister, with the purpose of serving children through mass media. One little more detail is I went to CBC, to Canada, and I set up my show there that was called Mr. Rogers. And that went on for 3 seasons. It was just 15 minutes. It was received well, but it was taken off the air. So I went back to Pittsburgh, and I managed to buy the rights to the show. And at age 38, I started making what was to become the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood. And that's starting airing in '68. And it was the first time that I was on camera. And I want to show you a little episode from a show called The Death of a Goldfish. I can stand, it's okay.
Here's a good place. When I was very young, I had a dog that I loved very much. Her name was Mitzi. And she got to be old, and she died. And I was very sad when she died, because she and I were good pets. And when she died, I cried. My grandmother heard me crying, I remember. And she came, she just put her arm around me, because she knew I was sad. She knew how much I loved that dog.
I still remember that dog. Well, that was one of the first episodes of the show. It was 2 years in, I guess maybe 20 or 40, but we did make 895 episodes. And we stayed on PBS for 30 years, until 2001. And Mr. Rogers was the longest running show ever on PBS, at least for children. And that's it for me. I'm going to go out of character. As I tell you, 5 lessons for us from Mr. Rogers.
That's a big weight to carry, isn't it, Mr. Rogers?
Yes, that was difficult, but thanks for bearing with me. I hope I didn't speak up. I'm also a behind-the-scenes guy, so. But I didn't have 7 years of preparation for this. So. But I read a lot about Mr. Rogers to prepare for this, and I found that he has some wonderful quotes, many which are relevant for us. So I want to read you some on 5 sort of topics that I curated. The first lesson is about getting to know yourself. This is something Mr. Rogers said. The greatest gift you can give is your honest self. And boy was he good at that. And that is definitely something I feel is missing from children's television today. You bring all you ever were and are to any relationship you have today. All life events are formative. All contribute to what we become year by year as we go on growing. As my friend, the poet Kenneth Koch once said, "You aren't just the age you are all the ages you have ever been." Second thing I think we can learn from Mr. Rogers is that feelings matter. People have said, "Don't cry," to other people for years. And all it has ever meant is, "I'm too uncomfortable when you show your feelings. Don't cry." I'd rather have them say, "Go ahead and cry. I'm here to be with you." You see, there's the good guy and the bad guy, and the bad guy is in all of us. But knowing that doesn't need to overwhelm us. Whatever we adults can do to help ourselves and anybody else discover that that's true can really make a difference in this life. So he really did take children's feelings seriously, as we could see. The third lesson is about listening. More and more I've come to understand that listening is one of the most important things that we can do for another. Whether the other be an adult or a child, our engagement in listening to who that person is can often be our greatest gift. Whether that person is speaking or playing or dancing, building or singing or painting. If we care, we can listen. And that's something I feel us who do interactive media can possibly do much better than television, actually. On listening, there's a world of difference between insisting on someone's doing something and establishing an atmosphere in which that person can grow into wanting to do it.
Can you say that again, please?
Yeah, can you say that again?
Yeah. There's a world of difference between insisting on someone's doing something and establishing an atmosphere in which that person can grow into wanting to do it. And that, to me, speaks volumes about education and where we need to go. And on play. Play does seem to open up another part of the mind that is always there, but that, since childhood, may have come closed off and hard to reach. When we treat children's play as seriously as it deserves, we are helping them feel the joy that is to be found in the creative spirit. We're helping ourselves stay in touch with that spirit too. It's the things we play with and the people who help us play that make a great difference in our lives. So, about keep playing. And lastly, but really this one should have been first, on purpose. Because if there's something that Mr. Rogers had, it's purpose. Please think of the children first. If you have anything to do with their entertainment, their food, their toys, their curiosity, their day or night care, their health care, their education, listen to the children, learn about them, learn from them. Think of the children first. And that is not how all children's media is created today, so I do think that's inspiring. Yeah, any questions for me or for Fred Rogers? I can attempt to answer them as well as I can.
If Mr. Rogers were to walk in this room, I think you captured a lot of his key messages very nicely. So I appreciate that. Yeah, that's not easy to do. Those are literally big shoes to fill. Where did you get your sweater?
I got it secondhand somewhere, yeah. My mom didn't knit it as it said that Mr. Rogers' sweaters were.
Sweet sweater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll keep it. No, but I think it was really inspiring to learn about him. I didn't grow up with Mr. Rogers, and that sense of purpose that he had. He knew what he wanted to do so early and just kept doing it. And you could say he had a breakthrough here and there, but it wasn't really until we wouldn't know who he was if it hadn't been, because he bought back those rights and put up that show and had those gaps in his resume of a couple of years, and then the more part of his career was from 40 plus and up. He was a late bloomer in some senses.
So, first of all, thank you for the research you did, and thank you for sharing the quotes and just sort of putting this presentation together. I know it's sort of difficult, especially, you know, some of the people that we represent, Skinner or Montessori or whatever, they passed away a long time ago, and they weren't part of our lives as children and stuff. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and those people work from the theory, so you can
Right,
explain
exactly.
behaviorism, you can
Exactly.
explain constructivism, but really, he was just the spirit.
Right. And you know, I grew up with, I would watch two shows when I was a kid, Mr. Rogers and The Muppet Show. That was pretty much my television as a child, a little bit of Sesame Street. And I remember asking my mom once when I was older, I turned on and I saw Mr. Rogers and I was like, you know, teen or whatever, and I looked at him and I said, why did you let me watch this? You know, it's so slow and it's so, you know, boring, and why did you let me watch this stuff? And she just looked at me, she's like, I have no idea, but you loved it. And I remember just thinking like, what? How did I love this stuff? But then now as an adult, reading his quotes, reading his work, and now seeing it through adult eyes and having my own children, now I understand. You know, I understand what the appeal was for kids. You know, he was real and genuine. He looked right into the camera. He's burying a goldfish. He's talking about real issues. It's powerful.
Yeah, he really cared about children, and he gave his honest self. And children, they can tell when it's real, or you're putting on a show.
He was the same way in real life.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
No articles, no, there was no character there, it was him.
Yeah.
Where did we see
Ask me later and I'll tell you a story.
Where did we see his presentation that he was to Congress in months?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was just mind-blowing and brought me to tears.
A couple of us who are here had a chance, what, was it 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, to be at the Fred Rogers Center. His legacy goes on in two different ways. There's the Fred Rogers company that makes Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood and a couple other things. They're doing some really nice work for Curious World right now, for HMH Curious World. But there's the Fred Rogers Center at St. Vincent College in Latrobe that he endowed essentially before he died. He and the Archabbot of St. Vincent went for a walk and came up with this whole idea for the Fred Rogers Center that would be where his archive would live and where his legacy would go on. And the director of it, who, you know, fascinating guy, he's been there about 3 years now. He came from Cartoon Network. He'd been a producer for Cartoon in Asia and came there and said, I want to make sure that what we do really fits. They've done a conference and he said, I'm not going to just do a conference to do one. And he put together an amazing conference 3 weeks ago that included, one of the panel that really stays with me is the head of the Bodega Association and the head of the National Coin Laundry Association. Because it was all about bringing families together for learning. And the bodegas in the cities, you can drop off your kid, you know, you can say, look, I gotta go to a doctor's appointment, watch my kid for an hour. They say, the head of it said, you don't want convenience, you want community. You want a place to go to do your shopping where they know who you are, where they know how you take their coffee, where they know your kids by name, where if your kid is acting out, they'll tell you. And the coin laundry guy said, we get families in here for 3 hours a week with nothing to do, so we want to turn that into a learning experience. They're doing book readings, they're doing literacy events, they're anything they can do once a family is in there. But the other amazing thing that happened, I hope, I don't know if you remember, if any of you were there, remember if they're going to put these online. The archivist for the Fred Rogers Center has been going through audio recordings, literally cassette recordings of Fred and Margaret McFarland, his mentor in child development. And they're very hard to hear at times, but they are the most remarkable conversations about child development, where Fred is trying out his ideas, he's struggling with how to present something in the right way, and Margaret is kind of pulling him forward to say, here's what's at the core of that, now how do you deal with that for a mass audience? I hope they're going online, because they are worth sitting and listening to.
There are 282 hour-long tapes and she's transcribed 128 of them so far, and it's taken her 2 years. It's a pretty amazing body of work. There you are testifying in front of Congress, and if you could just hear the tone. What he does here, and I played this for my college classes. He is one of our cooks. You can barely hear it.
Where are you?
You're supposed to stay under the table at all times, aren't you?
It's going through the. It's coming through the projector, but it's not going up to amplification.
Just go to your settings one and change it to.
Oh,
Yeah.
Do it.
Do the trick.
yeah.
Yeah.
What he does here, and I was asked to testify in front of Congress, and there were only four congressmen there on video game violence, and I've been in that seat with that microphone, and they come to you, and it's a really weird thing. And he goes away from his notes. What he does here just blows me away, because he said, you have a prepared statement. You're supposed to stick with that prepared statement. And he just puts it down and said, I trust that you'll read it later. He looks at him right in the eye and just lays this thing and says, I'd like to read a poem on television. Well, you're awesome. As well as all of the affiliated stations. That's going to get loud later, right? And this is scary. You got the floor, Rogers. Such a pompous guy. This is a philosophical statement and would take about 10 minutes to read, so I'll not do that. One of the first things that a child learns in a healthy family is trust. And I trust what you have said, that you will read this. It's very important to me. I care deeply about children. My first children...
Will it make you happy if you read it?
I'd just like to talk about it, if it's all right. My first children's program was on WQED 15 years ago, and its budget was $30. Now, with the help of the Sears Roebuck Foundation and National Educational Television, as well as all of the affiliated stations, each station pays to show our program. It's a unique kind of funding in educational television. With this help, now our program has a budget of $6,000. It may sound like quite a difference, but $6,000 pays for less than 2 minutes of cartoons, 2 minutes of animated, what I sometimes say, bombardment. I'm very much concerned, as I know you are, about what's being delivered to our children in this country. And I've worked in the field of child development for 6 years now, trying to understand the inner needs of children. We deal with such things as the inner drama of childhood. We don't have to bop somebody over the head to make him to make drama on the screen. We deal with such things as getting a haircut, or the feelings about brothers and sisters, and the kind of anger that arises in simple family situations. And we speak to it constructively.
How long a program is it?
It's a half hour every day. Most channels schedule it in the noontime as well as in the evening. WETA here has scheduled it in the late afternoon.
Could we get a copy of this so that we can see it? Maybe not today, but I'd like to see the program.
I'd like very much for you
I'd
to
like to see the program itself, or any one of them, you see.
Charmed this week. We made 100 programs for EEN, the Eastern Educational Network, and then when the money ran out, people in Boston and Pittsburgh and Chicago all came to the fore and said, we've got to have more of this neighborhood expression of care. And this is what I give. I give an expression of care every day to each child to help him realize that he is unique. I end the program by saying,
You've made this day a special day by just your being you. There's no person in the whole world like you, and I like you just the way you are. And I feel that if we in public television can only make it clear that feelings are mentionable and manageable, we will have done a great service for mental health. I think that it's much more dramatic that two men could be working out their feelings of anger. Much more dramatic than showing something of gunfire. I'm constantly concerned about what our children are seeing. And for 15 years I have tried in this country and Canada to present what I feel is a meaningful expression of care.
Do you narrate it?
I'm the host, yes. And I do all the puppets, and I write all the music, and I write all the script.
Well, I'm supposed to be a pretty tough guy, and this is the first time I've had goosebumps for the last 2 days.
Well, I'm grateful, not only for your goosebumps, but for your interest in our kind of communication. Could I tell you the words of one of the songs which I feel is very important?
Yes.
This has to do with that good feeling of control, which I feel that children need to know is there. And it starts out, what do you do with the mad that you feel? And that first line came straight from a child. I work with children, doing puppets in very personal communication with small groups. What do you do with the mad that you feel? When you feel so mad you could bite. When the whole wide world seems oh so wrong, and nothing you do seems very right. What do you do? Do you punch a bag? Do you pound some clay or some dough? Do you round up friends for a game of tag or see how fast you go? It's great to be able to stop when you've planned a thing that's wrong and be able to do something else instead. And think this song. I can stop when I want to, can stop when I wish, can stop, 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 anytime. And what a good feeling to feel like this, and know that the feeling is really mine. Know that there's something deep inside that helps us become what we can. For a girl can be someday a lady, and a boy can be someday a man.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. Looks like you just earned the $20 million.
So the way he looked at him the entire time, he made the choice to drop his notes and go away from the prepared statements. This is how I'm going to deal with this. It showed an incredible interpersonal sensitivity, and it worked, obviously. But he's, at the end, when you look at it again, just the eye contact, that was a master communicator.
You know, what was interesting is that Fred Rogers brought the speediness of the congressman down. He began to imitate Fred Rogers' cadence and mindfulness of speech. Like you could just hear him start to slow down and really think about what he was saying. So it was like he was imitating Fred Rogers.
Masterfully delivered, Mr. Rogers.
Well, I do what I can.
Oh my God, that's powerful stuff, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers I've asked him, and he's a very busy schedule, but he has suggested that it would be okay to ask for signatures during dinner, and also to pose for just a couple of photographs is appropriate.
The words on the sweater.
Know yourself, feelings, man. Oh.
Smart. It's like Teletubby, Mr. Brown.
The 6 ingredients there came from Rick at the Rogers Center. These were Hedda, who worked with Mr. Rogers, has been transcribing the tapes. This came out of one of the sessions, and So I took these literally from a text and gave them to my students. And so the paper that one of the students had was, how does this translate into interactive media? So that paper's really worth reading. But the Barbara had a strong reaction to number 6.
Number 6, allow for moments of solitude. And I mean, that's really what he was talking about when he was commenting about the cartoons bombarding the kids. But even today, in app design, you know, if you can give space for the connections to be made, instead of spoon feeding or, you know, making it obvious that, you know, A goes with A or B goes with B, you know, just that I think of solitude as not just the quiet and having the pacing, but also just like that blank space, the empty space, and pacing, so that they really are making the connections themselves.
Processing.
It's processing, sometimes it's processing, sometimes it's about creating, thinking of what's next, what's new. There's so much that happens during that time, you know, we aren't even aware of it. We just...
So another way to bend this around and make sure you walk away, one of the huge ingredients of magic came from some of the Muppets Muppet puppeteers who came to Industrial Magic 2 years ago now, and brought some of the puppets, and we were talking about, actually did some of the actions, and it was just crazy cool to watch this in real life and watch how they manipulated. And what the theme that came away from that was not when the puppet moves, but when the puppet doesn't move. And to know how important it is for the white space, and how important it is when you design any interactive interface to make sure it's interactive, and be very careful about bombardment. So what Mr. Rogers is he was a constructivist. He was driven by constructivist theory, so that the child builds their own knowledge inside of them, and through equilibration and disequilibration and all of the struggles with the dying goldfish and the things that help them construct their knowledge, their perception of the world, the representation of reality inside them as they become an adult, it happens and it unfolds. And so that's what drove him, and it came from his conversations with constructivists. So that comes from Montessori, Piaget, it's all of the same Kool-Aid. So if you understand that, you can pretty much get the same idea as the outcome were all of those programs. That was how it came, and it was the way to stop the pushing and let the child have a voice, let the child express themselves. So another big, really huge piece is respect for the child. Respect was such a key part of everything that he did, and giving that child a sense of worth, a voice, and speaking directly to the child, and the way he did directly to that politician, it works. It's very powerful stuff. So yeah, that was really fun to go down that, and that was. Darren, see, that was one of the ingredients from the cookbook. So this is the child development piece. I'm back on agenda here, just for the record, with the help of Mr. Rogers.
Do you need to sing us out?
No.
Well, we can do the song.
You can play it, I'll walk out.
Okay.